Hi, everyone, and welcome back to SSRG and Your View. Today, I have with me Ugo Emmanuel, who is all the way from Germany, and Tochukwu, all the way from the US. And, you know, I'm hiding in my small space in Canada. And today we'll be talking about code switching. And the reason I'm interested in talking about this is that this affects a lot of immigrants, Nigerian immigrants and other immigrants. And I have been in spaces where I see Nigerians trying to fit in so hard that they speak with accents that try to mimic British accent or Canadian accent or American accent. But you can see that it is not like genuine, it's not who they are, but they are forcing themselves to do that. And sometimes also, this is my own personal bias, like the thing pisses me off. But I also know that it's a lot of hard work for people to put in this amount of energy trying to speak in this type of way. So today, that's what I hope that we'll be talking about. And I'm going to jump in straight and ask the first question. Do you think code switching is a survival mechanism or a form of culture erosion? That's the first question.
Okay, so
Well,
because I thought, go on,
to
Ima.
begin with, to begin with, of course, it's a survival mechanism, even though that mechanism a lot of times can be used erroneously. And at the same time, it is a cultural erosion. Even though before I begin proper with what I have to say, I have to point out that there are a lot of arguments, a lot, not necessarily arguments, but a lot of scholars have made it clear that code switching is more about a language thing than of accent.
Hmm.
So what a lot of scholars will talk about, like how they define code switching, is that it is the ability to switch from one language to the other in a single
Hmm.
discourse rather than switching accent.
Hmm.
So maybe accent is just a peripheral part of code switching. I
Yeah,
don't.
like
I think
the bigger discourse on code switching is about your ability to navigate multiple languages when you
languages,
are
Yeah.
talking with someone. But we are more interested in the accents aspect of it.
yeah. I
Yes.
think, I
So the reason it's a cultural erosion for me is that a lot of people do these things because they want to feel among, right?
Hmm.
For me, I would describe it as people desperately searching for a sense of belonging. A lot
think,
of people also feel that if they do not speak in the accent of the host country, the citizens of this host country may not understand them very well when they are trying to say something. But
mm,
that is not true because when you try to fake an accent, it makes the conversation more complicated. But
Yeah,
maybe a
but
lot of
language should
people
also
would.
be a two-way thing, right? Like if I'm speaking with my accent, it's on you to try to understand what I'm saying
I
because you
was
speak, every human being has an accent.
I was getting to that, and that is why I mentioned that people are desperately searching for a sense of belonging, but there is something they do not know that having a sense of belonging in any country is a two-way process, just like you rightly mentioned right now. Your ability to feel a sense of belonging in any country, it's not about you trying to mimic that country, but it is also about that country trying to accommodate you. And if they must
Hmm.
accommodate you, they are going to accept you with your accent, no matter how it sounds. And this
Yeah.
is why a lot of people risk assimilation in their host country because they want to feel a sense of belonging. So it is a strong form of cultural erosion while people try to feel a sense of belonging.
I
Yeah.
think, I think people could switch for various reasons, and which one of which is what you mentioned, surviving in the host country or wherever they are. Another one is the sense of belonging that Ima just talked about. But I think in the larger picture, if people realize what code switching entails, then they can know better. Because for me, I feel like code switching brings that sense of language inferiority, accent inferiority, where you begin to see your own accent as being inferior. And so you want to imitate a superior accent. You want to speak like, you want to speak posh, you want to sound touche and all whatnot. So I think people do it for various reasons to be included, to have opportunities and also all whatnot. But then realizing that it also takes away from your authenticity as a person because your language is part of your identity. When you bring that language, you bring yourself into that space. So that's just what I was going to say about that.
Thank you for pointing that out, because in our previous video we talked about classism, but I also think that code switching is also tied to classism. Like even within Nigeria, like there are people who, when you speak English with your native accent, they will say you are sounding Ibotic, and it will sound
Exactly.
like you are unpolished, or you are not of the elite class or stuff like
You
that. So
sound poor.
Yeah.
yeah, you
You
sound poor, or you sound ghetto or something like
as
that.
if
Like
poverty has a sound.
good.
As if poverty has an accent. This is the accent
Yeah,
of poverty.
it's who
Yeah,
knows? I don't know.
and this is why a lot of rich people send their children to school that teach how to speak with the British accent in Nigeria,
Yes,
which
yes,
I find so disturbing, because why do we have to do that? But this is the classism we are talking about: the rich kid versus the poor kid.
yeah,
So if I should go to a place, if I should go to a reality show, for example, to speak in this exact accent I'm speaking, everybody will be like, yeah, we know where he's coming from.
yeah.
He's not the rich kind of kid, or they can imagine the
Yeah,
kind of school where you studied. And this is the
yes.
classism we are talking about. Yeah.
So, and for people, they feel like if they want to escape that's their status, or that's stereotype of classism, they have to code switch. And like I find it interesting because there
take
are,
it until you make it.
yeah, like even people who, like I was telling you guys the other day, one of my friends who I hope would see this video, who just immigrated to the UK the other day, is already speaking with British accent. And I'm like,
How did you
dude,
learn that?
where have you been practicing this? Like, because we went to university together. I know this person very well. So,
Right.
but
And
also,
and and
the other question I want to ask,
one thing people do not realize is that when you fake an accent, two things will happen. The people who have the accent, the original owners of this accent, know that you're faking it. We, the people that are not the owners, we know you're faking it because it sounds embarrassing.
So you're not anywhere. You're neither here
so
or there.
So the other thing I want to ask, because when people could switch to, especially to sound white, that's how I talk about to speak white or sound white.
Mm.
How what is the connection between that and entrenching of colonial and Eurocentric norms? Because language is a powerful tool. I'll give you an
Oh,
example.
It is.
When I was in Hong Kong, there are people who are called expatriates and there are people who are called immigrants. If you're a white person, you are considered an expatriate in Hong Kong. If you are not a white person, you are an immigrant working in Hong Kong. So language, both the way it sounds and the words they use, and are very important. So how does code switching, especially when people do it to sound white, entrench Eurocentric and colonial norms?
of course, TC already mentioned something like this, but I'm just going to speak further about it. One way it does that is that, first of all, it gives you a sense of inferiority. This is one thing it does, because we feel that our own accent, like our Nigerian accent, is not good enough. So even when you live in Nigeria, you already accept that you have to speak in a certain accent for your English to be good. So now, when you end up traveling abroad, when you go to UK or wherever you find yourself, you are going to try to speak in that manner because you feel that is the standard. In Nigeria, for example, if people, especially older adults, well, I don't want to make this generalization. Let me limit it to my parents. When my parents want to describe an intelligent child or somebody who they feel speaks good English, I say, you know, you see
Mm,
this, that the person
yeah.
speaks like a white. That mindset makes
Speaking
it,
white is the
yeah,
same thing, yeah.
this mindset makes it absolutely that the white man knows how to speak the good English.
Yes,
And
yes.
this is the sense of inferiority I'm talking
I
about,
think,
which
I,
reinforces modern day colonization.
I think that what Prince would be getting at is what I read up somewhere, and it's called linguistic racism, right? And so it's that idea that some languages are inferior compared to other languages, and even some dialect. So, like in schools and in professional settings, and in this study that I read, which we'll share, it's by Johnson and colleagues in 2022. they talked about how African American English is not accepted in schools and in professional settings. So if you speak like this African American, so you are not accepted. So that reality is also there. And they also talked about the fact that mentalizing comes in. So when you internalize that inferiority, you begin to want to code switch so that you can feel part of and also speak like the superior person.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out or maybe ask about is how you think this may affect people who, as a form of resistance or because they are not interested in code switch, how it would impact their ability to get a job or grow in a job. Because there is some research evidence that shows that employers are more comfortable employing people who could switch to speak like the dominant white culture that they are part of. So, like, if you refuse to do that, how do you think it might impact your ability to get a job or progress in your career or stuff like that?
I think it affects in ways, in diverse ways. And there was a story. I don't think the story was real, that was cited by these authors, of how a graduate student, so even graduate students are part of the whole mix. A graduate student was in a graduate gathering and they were having conversation with mostly white people. And the graduate student's sister or sibling called, and the graduate student, who is an immigrant of an inferior language identity, couldn't take the call because they didn't want to feel inferior because of their dialect and all whatnot. It got me thinking, what if that person's sibling was in an emergency situation and needed that person to take that call, or there's something important or urgent that they want to take? So there are social consequences around it, and all whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think, like, for instance, if you get into a relationship with someone who is not of your ethnicity and you start code switching with that person, are you going to do that for the rest of the relationship? Or will there get to a point where you're like, I'm tired of this, and then speak the way you
I
And
feel
normally
and
like
about what you said concerning employment, how people who do not code switch might be economically disadvantaged when it comes to employment. What I think about this is that it's only going to create what I describe as perceived competence. Because if you're going to employ me simply because I am able to sound like someone from the UK, but I don't have what it takes to do this job, you're going to find out along the line, right? And it's still going to be a
Yeah,
problem.
but the person, you have already lost the job if you can't code switch. Like, it
exactly.
Yeah,
doesn't matter whether the
yeah,
other person is competent or not.
yeah, but somehow there is still someone who is able to understand that. There are still employers out there who are able to understand that it's not necessarily about how you sound. It is about
True.
what you have to offer. So
Like
I
you
don't know to
said,
what extent people have been disadvantaged because they are not able to code switch. But I know that either way, people who do not code switch are not going to always lose out on
like you
employment all
said,
the time.
Prince, communication is a two-way street. So if I'm talking, it should not be my own responsibility to make you to understand what I'm saying. So it's your responsibility to actually understand. My responsibility is to speak and speak in a way that is clear and audible for you to hear me and understand me. So, but people do both jobs where they speak and also try to make you understand them. So if an employer wouldn't take you, I feel like there's a fine line there because you need the job. But to the point that if an employer doesn't want to take you because of your authenticity or sticking to your language or your language, your dialect, I feel that's a win for your identity. That even though in the long run you lost that employment opportunity, but that's a win for you.
Well, this is controversial because because if I lose a job and you describe it as an identity win, then somebody might say, "What is my identity when I'm jobless?" You know this kind of
When you're jobless and hungry,
is this a jobless identity?
yeah.
But I definitely understand what you're talking about. And it is true because I always say this, even before we recorded this video, that the only reason someone from Canada, for example, is sounding the way they do is because they were born with that accent. They did not
Yeah.
have to struggle to learn it. The reason why we speak Igbo language with our accent is because this is our own accent, our dialect. So if you speak with somebody from Canada and they are not able to understand you, this is the same way you are not able to understand them completely because of their own accent. So it's a 50-50 situation. I don't know why people have to fake it.
I feel like just going back to what I said, I feel like for people who are code switching for a substantial reason, like there's an endpoint, maybe employment or something, we can easily forgive them. But I know that there are people who could switch for no reason. Like there is no employment on the line, there is nothing on the line. You just want to sound posh. You just begin to
Yeah,
speak.
but the thing is that that's why we are talking about language pride and
Mm,
colonialism and Eurocentrism, because there are people who are not comfortable with who they are and their
mhm,
background. I just
mhm.
saw on the other day on LinkedIn that Kemi said she doesn't identify as Nigerian. You know,
Oh
the
yeah,
British, yes,
yeah, yeah.
British Nigerian. But
Mhm,
that's the thing. Like this, like I see this in Canada, but when I recently traveled to the UK, it was very obvious to me that a lot of Nigerians in the UK do this a lot. Like they are talking to me, we ask turn to talk to someone else, and they suddenly code switch, and I'm like, dude,
mm.
if you speak normally, they can hear you, they can understand you.
And
Sometimes is that they don't even want people to know that they are Nigerians. Like
Exactly,
they are not proud to
exactly.
be Nigerians to the point that they want people to know who they are.
I think, I think,
that is because a lot of Nigerians have a way of associating accent with timidity. This is
Mm.
it. Like
And even
if
intelligence.
exact
exactly.
and even intelligence. So if you don't speak in that polished accent, people consider you as timid and not developed. And this is why a lot of people will tell you. So even 3 years in the US, you still speak like this. You've not changed. And I'm like, how am I supposed to change?
Would I
So for
share
you
my
to see me
experience?
as somebody who has developed is for me to speak as if I were from the US. What kind of thing is that? It doesn't make sense. But
I,
people don't even do that. I keep on saying it. If you could switch, if you try to fake an accent, you complicate the language.
I
People
feel
do
like
not understand you better when you could switch,
we're calling
except
it
you were
code
born and
switch.
bred in that country.
I feel like we're calling it code switch. And I think maybe that's the professional concept or idea. It should be
You want to call
faking.
it forming.
I mean, faking.
No, now phone, then they call up for Niger phone.
In our fune.
Because
Yeah. So when
exactly,
you get
you're faking it. And to what Ima said, I have the experience where I was in a gathering with some people who are citizens of the country, and so they have their accent and all. And I was also in the mix of some Nigerians who has been here before me. They came to the US before me. So we're talking, and somehow this person said, "Oh, it's obvious that this other person has been here before you because they speak in a more Americanized accent." And I'm like, oh, wait.
exactly.
Actually, it got me wanting to change my accent. It got me because I was like, what does that mean? I felt unaccepted in that space. And that's
Yeah.
some of the consequences that those kind of things can
And
bring.
what you just said is the reason for the recent divide, and not just a divide, but a fight between what I consider so dumb. And the
Mm,
reason I consider it is imagine Africans, we are Africans, and all of us are in the US. And now there is a classification of African Americans and original Africans. Somebody said this on social media yesterday, and I was so surprised because I was thinking, what is original African and African American? And it is, black people fighting against one another because this one is timid, this one is posh. It doesn't make sense to me.
mm,
Well, it is something else that can be talked about, like, because if we open that box,
Yeah, of
we will
course.
different
not go today.
conversation.
But the last thing I wanted to talk about is, so how do people, both immigrants and people in their native countries who are, because of colonization, tend to code switch or form or use phone, anyone you want, how do they start changing that thinking and take pride in their language and their accent? What what do we do?
I think I have just one thing about that is to realize that everything, like I feel like most conversations around Black and indigenous people and or whatnot would center around colonialism, would center around Western hegemony. And so realizing that when you code switch, it's actually benefiting that idea of language inferiority and language superiority. So coming with your full self into that space, understanding that when you are talking, you express yourself the way you're expressing yourself. It's the other person's duty to ask, even when they don't understand, ask for clarifications, ask you, oh, can you say that again? That's a responsible way to communicate. If they don't understand you, they ask for clarification. So understanding that you don't have to fake it for somebody to understand you, that's the primary thing that we have to do. And also doing this kind of podcast to get people to get more awareness about the reality of code switching.
Yeah, and added
Do
to
you have
that,
anything to say?
added to that is that, yes, of course, even before today, I made a video that I posted on my personal social media handle, and I talked about this. I talked about how every country of the world has an accent. Okay, now let me pin it to the English language because it's a universal language, right? So a lot of countries of the world speak English, but all these
Universal
countries,
language.
yes, of course, it's just a
Why?
pin. I just pinned it to that. Yeah, but almost all countries of the world speak English with a certain
Yeah.
accent.
Mm.
When an Indian speaks, you will understand it. When somebody
Even in
from,
England, different parts
when,
of England speak
of
with
course,
different accents.
when a
Even in the
German
US, there are different parts
when
that speak different accents.
when a German speaks English, you definitely notice the accent. When a Nigerian speaks, you notice it. So what people should simply understand is that it is not wrong to speak
Yeah.
this English with your accent. Once people are able to accept that it is fine to speak it with that accent, our problems will be over. Because the reason why people do everything to code
Our problems
switch,
will not be over, but keep going.
It's a
our
start.
problem. See, our phone problems will be over to a
Okay,
certain
okay.
extent. Yes,
Yeah.
not our general problems. Okay,
And
so once people are able to accept this, of course, they will just understand that it doesn't make sense to fake it. And I keep on saying it. When you try to fake your accent because you want the other person to understand, you're not making them understand, you're making it more complicated. People understand better when you keep it natural. The only thing is that
let me just
at some
chip
point
in
they can
something.
say, "What did you say?" And then you repeat it and you keep on going. This
Can
is
I
what I
just chip in
think.
something? Like there are people who appreciate your language and your accent the way it is. Like there are, I've been in conversation with people, white folks, who I would talk to, and they'll be like, "Oh wow, I love your accent." I'm like, "Okay, this is the same
I don't
accent."
even want anybody complimenting or talking about my accent. Just
But
hear it, have your opinion, carry it in your head. Don't tell me whether
Because
you like it or not.
it could be a
but
fake compliment, right?
but the
It
point,
can. It can be one
yeah,
of those, oh, you don't sound like a Nigerian or you don't sound like a black person. All those compliments that are cloaked in racism. I don't
no,
even want to hear.
but to the point is that sometimes people appreciate you the way you come and the way you
True.
speak, and they
Your
understand
authenticity.
and they want
Yeah.
you to be like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you all. And if you're authentic, try to subscribe
Continue.
and like this video. And you can also find us in other platforms, including Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the rest of them. Thank you
Yeah.
all for
And when you
listening.
like our videos and subscribe, remember one thing. No need for phone. No, they do phone,
Don't use accents to like the video. Just
Exactly. No like our video with phone.
all right.